Rob Zombie has this fascinatingly strong ability to either make something that you really bloody love or you absolutely hate. He is as divisive as all the films he has made. I have yet to see a strong opinion of a medium on this, but I honestly admire it because it's the product of making what feels right to you, cutting through all the bullshit, making the movie you're making and saying F off to anybody else. I admire that. Halloween 2019 is batshit crazy in a lot of ways, but it's the strongest trait it has. Whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, you have to be careful, because when you don't care much about what the audience thinks of your movie, it may be forced to be a brilliant film that people can't scrutinize. People don't mind a crappy movie if they like the director, but if they don't like the director and the movie is bad, well, that's a whole different story. We couldn't talk objectively about this film without addressing Rob Zombie's lack of love for these films. It has always been obvious why fans didn't see him as the right person for the task of remaking the Halloween films. It's embedded in classic horror cinema. Remaking it will always invite negative reaction. We could argue the closer you are to the source material, the harder it could be to be genuine in the writing that you want to write. Halloween 2007 was, at the very least, the dirtier imagination of Haddonfield and its small band of teenagers. It was totally an unfiltered version of John Carpenter's classic. Gore up, profanity up, the dials are turning considerably. We refer to John Carpenter as the master of horror. I also refer to Rob Zombie as the master of horror. Similarly to John Carpenter's 1981's Halloween 2, Rob Zombie focused his sequel on the connection between Michael and his baby sister Angel Myers, better known as Laurie Strode. Further going down the road many fans couldn't get behind, dream sequences, white horses turning Laurie into a monster, same like her older brother Michael. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die, as well as the minds which are prevented from changing their opinion, they cease to be mind. Halloween was a simple creation. It took little aside from great minds to make it. Small budget, small shooting schedule. Everything will change. Michael Myers was always ambiguous, in ways of which were chosen to bring terror would differ from one person helming the pen, but each change is a new angle and not really made so we can further understand a character not meant to be understood, but more so given a different life, or breathing different air. Even if offensive or drastically bolder in tone, it's still this character that's exempt of morality, made to shape the mind of its creator. Halloween was always open to interpretation. It was basically nothing if not open to interpretation. Rob Zombie's Halloween sequel has been aging quite promisingly, seeming almost better each year, but it's certainly subjective, and my personal way of dealing with my own childhood traumas have created some sort of space where I actually understand what the message of this movie is getting across. And I can appreciate the messiness, but I can understand the feelings of people who don't hold that same sense of appreciation for just how raw the film is, but I'm always going to have that part of me that really does understand it. I think the real curse of Michael Myers is how unwilling people are, or we are, to see him change, or see him in an environment which is not clutching at the success of the past Halloween films, and are cutting too close to what's worked to even be an original idea of your own. Perfectly defined like this, Carpenter drew a blank outline, Rob Zombie filled it in. If there was any real connection between the two films, it's that both are unimaginable without the specific visions of the respected auteurs. David Gordon Green worried a lot about honouring Carpenter's work, and Rob Zombie was brilliant in this way because he just didn't care. He didn't care if it pissed you off or if you liked the film, because at the end of the day it was still his film. John Carpenter left a lot up in the air because Halloween was always just a movie about a guy killing teenagers. And in 2007, it became this white trash movie, and it was so far past what Haddonfield seemed to represent in the first original film, but it was also meant to. For Rob Zombie, Michael's origin story wasn't one of beginning or birth, but of devolution and death. What we witness is not so much an origin as it is a decline. This is the hollowing out of a human being, a transformation from person to shape. Nadine Smith puts that very beautifully. Halloween 1978 was entirely open to how you believe the events came to be. Rob Zombie etched onto the mold in a way that was complimenting of the shape. His sequel, while very messy and characters sometimes hard to watch, probably gonna find some moments gross, but that's life, and trauma is like that, and real stories are like that. Rob Zombie's first film is a bit like his master's thesis. He does his duty, acknowledges the debt he owes to his cinematic ancestors, but he articulates something unique in his own voice. The second Halloween is his dissertation, balls to the walls, throwing out all the rule books, asserting his own authorship. It seems any story expanding the evil of Michael Myers is turned down promptly. There is nothing mythological to grasp onto. It's simply evil in form, easy to understand. Halloween 2009 feels entirely theatrical. Such feelings of intense, heavy theater work. I wish I could put it into words, the right words, but I can't. It is the most unlike film of the film franchise if they're all paired together, and everything of which is most controversial to a lot of people is what made it excel so greatly. Whether it's Alice Cooper merging his love for dark rock, transcending into the realm of horror, or it's Rob Zombie pioneering a sound of violence, subsequently transcending into the realm of horror films, there's always been a really good link between horror and rock and roll. Rob Zombie is a good example of how well it can truly work. And whether it's on stage at a show or it's behind the camera, there's always that part of Rob Zombie which knows how to keep a really perfect tone. But questions we have to ask ourselves is like, what would we expect to see of a young girl who just saw her friends, best friends, her parents being murdered? She's on the brink of madness. It's messed up because Halloween 2009 is meant to be messed up. The ability to portray the devastating emotion of losing his daughter and then losing Laurie in part 2. The acting from Brad Dourif made sympathizing for a character that we haven't seen so much of in the previous films. It made it so much more heavy-hitting. I always found these films to stand so well on their own, and I'll always find it impressive to see someone develop such a solid body of film work, having only learned to direct through directing his own music videos, and then pumping out these films that feel so serious in the depths they're going to tell the story that he wants to tell. I'm not asking you to enjoy his movies, I'm only asking that you detach from the past and you watch these films knowing it was done with the respect for his own style. A director has a legacy, and it's very nice to see somebody not change their approach as an auteur, because if you lose that, then what else do you have? You don't need to like it, but understand why it had to be the way it was. Understand that it couldn't be a rip-off of John Carpenter's Halloween film. It had to be Rob Zombie's film.